the Brandy.
All right, welcome into a brand new episode of Get Me The Brandy, and we got a big-time first-timer on Get Me The Brandy. I mean, it's only our, fourth episode, but we're stepping it up in episode number 4 with the old 2-9er Phil Bourque. Bourque, I'm ready to hot stove it and talk some Penguins with you for the next little bit.
Well, Josh, you know I am, and I'll be honest with you. Come on, get me the brandy. Now you're singing my music there. Come on, the old Mikey Lang saying, and yeah, man. So throughout this podcast, I will have him in the back of my mind because that was a classic. And as you know, Josh, Mikey took a lot of heat for that back in '92. You know, you're talking about alcohol. Like, what do you think you're doing? And now we talk about anything on the air, pretty much. Yeah, he'll be in the back of my mind throughout this podcast for sure.
Yeah, it is always a great start when we get to hear his voice in the beginning of everything. And it sets you in a good mindset to talk Penguins. And I think we have to be, Bourque, because holy smokes, the last 24 hours or so have been pretty busy for Kyle Dubas, for this Penguins roster as it pertains to the players on it. But let's start with the injuries off the top, because to me, I think the most surprising one is probably the goaltender on Monday night, Tristan Jarry, who finished that game against Toronto. It seemed like, the team obviously had a really destructive and disastrous third period, but I don't know if I would have said I picked up on anything with him, but upper body injury, Justin Brazeau injured, Noel Acciari hurt in that game in Toronto as well. So three pretty big pieces to this great Penguin start, now going to be out for at least a month, it sounds like.
I agree with you. And as far as the Tristan Jarry thing, that threw me for a loop too. I didn't see that one coming. And Tristan's had a great start. You have to tip of the Jofa to him in the way he's carried himself this year. And really the both of them, right? With Artur Shilovs, I think they've played well off of each other. It seems like when one guy has a great game, the next guy wants to double down and have an equally great game. So yeah, you are concerned for Tristan Jarry. With all that said, Josh, you look back to, even go back and further with Jack St. Ivany out in training camp, right? With that injury in the preseason game. Joel Blomqvist is injured. He's been on the shelf for a while. We don't know what's going on with him. Rutger McGroarty on the shelf. We don't know what's going on with him. Kevin Hayes, right? And then we hear about Rickard Rakell, Justin Brazeau, right? And the guys that you just mentioned. And here's the thing that I've been thinking about all day, Josh, is it's great to have depth. And we have more depth here than we probably have had since you've joined the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think you'll agree with me. And we talk about depth. We're talking about not just good prospects. We're talking about guys that are ready to kick the door open and play in the National Hockey League and be contributors and stay in the National Hockey League for a long career. We haven't been able to say that in a long time. Now we have guys that are ready to play in the NHL. But with all that being said, I don't think if we have guys that can replace a Rickard Rakell, a Justin Brazeau. They're very unique players on this team with unique skill sets, and their skill sets fit the certain lines that they're on. And of course, I'm talking about Rakell and Brazeau, right?
Right, of course.
I don't know. Dan Muse has been very creative in what he's try different players on those lines to see if something would really grab on, and it really hasn't happened yet. So, yeah, this has been an unbelievable stretch here where it's hard to go 2 or 3 games without somebody significant being on the shelf with an injury.
Yeah, it's going to test this team's depth, like you just mentioned, and in ways that we probably haven't really necessarily thought of, with guys getting opportunities to play up in the lineup. I mean, just most recently, we've seen Philip Hollander get that crack on the first line with Sidney Crosby and Bryan Rust. And then there was the practice on, what day are we? Wednesday, where Ben Kindel, Bourque, to steal your line, gets the upgrade to the penthouse with Sidney Crosby and Bryan Rust. And I think at this point, like, why not? Right? He's been that good.
Yeah. I think put yourself in the room. We talked about this before, Josh. Put yourself in that coach's room, and they're all huddled around. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? I think if you're really being honest with yourself, he's the best choice. Now, I think we all agree that Ben looks better. He has played a little bit of wing in the preseason, looks a lot better as a center, his natural position. Okay, with that said, but you're right. For a kid that's not going to be able to drink legally in the United States for another 3 years. Excuse me, number 81? No, the elevator over here That's the one that goes right up to the penthouse. You're playing with Sid and Rusty. I mean, an incredible moment. And I talked to him before the Toronto game, Josh, and I said, this is a big market. It's a big deal. You're a Canadian kid, and Vancouver, where he's from, that's a big deal out there. But nothing's bigger than the hockey mecca of Toronto. And even when you go to New York and Madison Square Garden, I'm like, hey man, you're not overwhelmed by the venue, by the opponent, by your line mates, any of that. He says, you know what I do? I do a lot of visualizing before the game, like especially for arenas like New York, like Toronto. I'll go out and I'll look around and I'll absorb and I'll take everything in. So by the time the puck drops, I've already done all of that stuff in my head and I just want to play. And so I don't think he'll be overwhelmed playing with Sid. And the good thing is he's been playing with Sid a little bit, right, Josh, on the power
Right.
play. So he's got his feet wet a little bit there.
Yeah, Sid and Bryan Rust too on that power play. So you're
Right.
right. He has a little bit of pre-built in chemistry, I guess, in that sense. We went a little out of order there. I know our producer Nick probably was like, come on, Josh, you're like 2 minutes into this and you're already screwing things up. But I couldn't ask you about Ben Kindel, or I could not ask you about Ben Kindel, I should
Yeah.
say. But with all those roster moves and all those injuries, Owen Pickering is the guy who goes down. The
Yeah.
injuries are the reasons why Brazeau is not here, Acciari is not here, Jarry, Raquel, run
Right.
down the list.
Right.
But Pickering was reassigned to Wilkes-Barre Scranton in the midst of all that on Tuesday. And
Yep.
I know you and I have had our conversations. I know you and Joe Brand have had your conversations. Colby Armstrong and I
Yep.
have had our conversations. It just seems like there's still some strides to be taken at the professional level from Pickering after the better part of the last few weeks getting another NHL crack there.
Um, I think it was the right move
Yeah.
for the Penguins and for Owen Pickering. He's just not ready. He's not ready. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and give you a lot of fluff here. He just looked, and it seemed to be getting a little bit worse confidence wise. Where he was getting beat up in that Winnipeg game, and then a couple of mistakes there in the Toronto game, and they were glaring. So it's okay. It's okay. Like just because he's a first round pick, it doesn't always happen right away. So go
Right.
back down, work on your craft. Hopefully you're here for 15 years, man. And we look back on this and say, hey, remember those first couple of years with Owen Pickering, Josh? Remember we kind of struggled, and he was really good that first 25 games the first year, but then the next year he kind of took a couple steps backwards. Then he went down to Wilkes. He was really good, came back up, was kind of good, had to go back to Wilkes again. It's okay. It's okay. I think for defensemen, you got to give it 5 years. You got to give it 3 to 5 years. And again, forget that he's a first round pick. Don't put that pressure on him. He doesn't want to put it on himself. So let's just look at him as a big 6'5" defenseman that can really play the game. He's got great smarts. He's got a great attitude. He's a great teammate. A lot of intangibles into Owen Pickering's game. But as far as reading plays and being NHL strong and NHL ready that way, I think he needs some more seasoning. So I think it was the right move.
Yeah, and he'll go down to Wilkes-Barre with Kirk McDonald down there, and we know what the plan will be. He'll play on the top pair. He'll play
Yes.
big-time minutes, big situational minutes, and build himself back up to when that
Yes.
next recall inevitably comes, because it will call. It will come. He will come back to Pittsburgh
Yeah.
at some point
100%.
and get another crack here on the Penguin blue line. But the guys that are coming up, we'll talk about them in a second. I'm just curious, Borky, when you look at this Penguins roster, 8-4-2 now to start this
Yeah.
season. Now, granted, the players we just mentioned, they've been a part of that. Actually, in the sense of guys like Brazeau and Jarry, and even Acciari with that identity line with him and Lizotte and
Yep.
Dewar, they've been huge
Yep.
contributors to that 8-4-2 start. What do you think what we've learned and can learn about a team, and you've been in these situations as a player? You go through these
Yep.
injuries. It's not the Sidney Crosbys of the world, but it's maybe those
Yep.
complementary guys that can hurt you even more because they're so
Yeah.
impactful in ways deeper in your lineup that you don't necessarily realize what you had until it's gone.
Right. And when you look at those wins, Josh, and I think you'll agree with me that they were complete team efforts. That when you
Yeah.
walked out of that building, you weren't just thinking about Sid, or you're thinking about, was it Jarry or Sheilov standing on their head, or, the power play was unbelievable. You start running through your head. You're like, wow, how about that play that Dewar? He didn't have a goal tonight, but man, he was all over it. And Acciari was an absolute son of a gun out there. And Lizotte was shot out of a cannon. And yeah, that third line was really good. And then you look at the minutes, and everybody has played double digits this whole season. Forward 1 to 12, D 1 to 6. That tells you that this team, the blueprint for this team winning games is everybody contributing, whether it's on the score sheet or not on the score sheet. And they've all embraced that. They understand their roles. And so now when you have pieces moving around on the chessboard, you might have some hesitation. And this league is so good. You can see what happened in the Toronto game. It can dissipate so quick, as well as a great start out of the gate. And so you've got to find a way. You've lost a couple games here, the Winnipeg and Toronto games, and they were tough losses. But you got to get back on that horse. And those players that are coming up have got to embrace what their role is and understand, I have to contribute. Hopefully it's on the score sheet. Hopefully you're chipping in offensively. If not, it needs to be an impactful, a big hit, a scrap, a block shot, something to impact the hockey game. You have to find a way to do that no matter who you are in this club.
And you mentioned those guys coming up. Now, we're going to get into that right now. And I think it's interesting because when the Penguins put the tweet out yesterday, there was a response to that tweet that cracked me up of, the Penguins have recalled Ryan Graves, Danton Heinen, and Sergei Murashov. And I think the response was, I went through an entire roller coaster of emotions in reading this entire tweet because we know how excited Pittsburgh is and how eager the fans are to see Sergei Murashov. And we also know, let's be honest, that the relationship between the Penguins, their fans, and Ryan Graves has been rocky since he's come on board since a free agent. And Danton Heinen, I think, was that forward in camp where you looked at the young guys and they probably supplanted the veteran in Heinen as far as taking a spot on this lineup. So to their credit, they go down to Wilkes-Barre, and from all accounts, and I talked to Kyle Dubas for Penguins Game Plan earlier today, they didn't sulk. They went down there, and in fact, Danton Heinen's tied for the AHL lead in scoring. Ryan Graves has been a great leader within that locker room. We've seen some of the wild pictures of him with that pickaxe as the player of the game. And now they're gonna come back up here to Pittsburgh. And who knows, Bourque? Like, we don't know exactly what we're gonna see from these guys. We know the body of work in the NHL kind of speaks for itself at this point in their careers. But maybe something changes with that stint down in Wilkes-Barre, and they come back up here for another crack.
It's humbling, man. It's humbling if you're a veteran guy, you're on one-way contract, you've played hundreds and hundreds of NHL games, and then you're riding the buses, and as well as, I know that Ryan Graves has a new family, right? And so to be down there, does your family come with you? Are they staying here? They think you're coming back up. So there's a lot goes into off the ice stuff too. But what I've understood when they went down there, they were good soldiers. But Kirk McDonald told the media, listen, let's get all these cards on the table here right now. That, listen, we know they don't want to be down here. We get that. And there's a lot of guys down here are trying to get to the NHL.
Right.
These guys, Heinen and Graves, they're trying to get out of the AHL, and get back to the NHL. So I heard they were great teammates. And again, you mentioned Heinen putting up numbers. Gravy was just a real good soldier down there. And so, hopefully that humility, he comes up here and plays with a fever, right? Plays with a fire in his belly. He's a big boy. If he played nastier, I think everything else would fall in place for him. That's all I'm going to say about Ryan Graves. I wish him the best. He's a good guy, but we're not in the good guy business, right? We're in the win hockey games business. And Danton Heinen too, right? He's a solid NHL player. I'm glad that he found some offensive flair down there. Hopefully brings that up because we're going to need him. Right? With the bodies that are out. Murashov is another conversation. I'll try not to be too long-winded, Josh, and save you some meat on the bone. Right?
Go, Bourque.
So
let's hear
Murashov, from what I understand, we know his numbers, right? What's he, 17-5, something like that? Lifetime in the American Hockey League. We know what he did in the East Coast League. He chewed it up and spit it out, right? He absolutely destroyed the East Coast League, and he did the same in the American Hockey League. I also understood he's never lost in overtime. He's never lost in the shootout as a professional. I mean, this guy is the real deal. And everybody says, whoa, Bourque, wait a minute. You can't bring a 21-year-old goaltender and just throw him into the fire in the National Hockey League. This team is not great defensively. They give up too many odd man breaks. He'll get destroyed. I don't think so, Josh. I think this kid is different. In the off season, he just started hiking around different states in the United States. He became one with nature. Is he some kind of yogi or some kind of is he some kind of prodigy? Like, I need to know who this kid is because you watch him play the position. He's so sound. And also, what I also found out about him, Josh, is that when the game is on the line, and whenever that might be, more times than not, it's in the third period. I mentioned in overtime, when the most important part of the game is on the line, and maybe it's the middle of the game. Maybe you were just down 3-0 early on. You've made it 3-3. That's when he brings out his best. And man, it got my juices flowing. I'm like, I need to see this kid up in the National Hockey League. This is going to be incredible. I wish him the best. I hope he's playing in that game against Washington Capitals, against Alexander Ovechkin. Russian versus Russian. Put his feet to the fire because I think he's ready for it. I think he's so calm. He's so cool. He's so collected. He's so confident that what could go wrong? You know,
Right.
like, and you know how it is with goaltenders. When young goaltenders come in and they start spinning a web and they get on a roll, it is so contagious to the rest of the team that it can put you to places where you never thought you could go.
I think too, just to go off your thought, two things on Murashov. One, I'm also excited, and I hope he starts. I hope his NHL career debut is against Alex Ovechkin. I mean, that'd be so cool. A kid's 21 years old. My other thought on this is, and I know, listen, the Penguins have been very straightforward, and Kyle Dubas, Jason Spetz, and whenever they've spoken about this kid, they're excited, they're optimistic, but they always caution. And you
Caution.
know just as well as I do. I mean, you have a goaltender in your family. They take a little bit longer than maybe
Yeah.
traditional position players to develop. With that being said, I have a thought that the Penguins have been so hesitant to bring this guy up because they're afraid it's going to be impossible to bring him back down. That's my
Oh, you're
theory there.
killing me. Oh
So
my
I
goodness.
I just feel like they've been like, we just want him to marinate more. We just want him to
Yeah.
marinate more, and that's been great because listen, all he's done
Yeah.
is win. But there's
Wow.
just this thought in my head that they're thinking, well, if he does come up and he lights it up and we keep winning, how do we now say,
Oh
hey,
my.
Sergei, great job. The bus is ready to take you back to Northeast
No.
Pennsylvania. You don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good. That's what I'm interested to see. And I mean, listen, we have to kind of temper our expectations. But every time we've seen this kid, including in a Penguins jersey, this preseason when that
Yeah.
shootout in Montreal when he was out of his
Yep.
mind,
Out of his
and
mind.
the
Yeah.
save he made on Demidov there
Yep.
late in that game too. Like he's shown himself to rise to these moments, and whether it's Washington or I was talking to Colby Armstrong yesterday, and he brought this up that he's played in Wheeling. He's played in Wilkes-Barre. He's used to funky start times, and this weekend back-to-back at 12:30,
Yeah.
that's not going to really throw a wrench probably in any of his preparational plans. I mean, as you mentioned, the kid went hiking all over the place this summer, so he
Yeah.
seems to just go with the flow. And regardless of when he's in, there's going to be some buzz around that game in Penguin Land, and it'll be fun to watch.
Here, we don't just watch the Penguins. We live every tipped puck.
Unbelievable.
Every battle.
Give me more of this.
Every new prospect.
This is a glimpse of the future.
Everything you love about the Pens, we do too.
I'm down here between the benches.
You know what that means, Pens fans?
Cheers for that.
The fuck did they score?
We manifested it.
Stream the Penguins all season long on SNP 360.
You mentioned the buzz that could potentially be his NHL debut against Alex Ovechkin. That's the next matchup for the Penguins on Thursday night. We get Crosby, Ovechkin. It's always going to be a spotlight. I mean, we don't even have the game, as you know, on Sportsnet Pittsburgh because it gets that national spotlight.
Sure.
But when you think about that, you've been a part of it the whole way through, Bourque, which I think is so unique. I mean, these two of the greatest players in the history of the game, but certainly in the last 2 decades, you could argue the 2 greatest players in hockey, from just an overall player perspective in Sid, from an obvious goal scorer perspective in Ovi. What do you think's allowed this rivalry, Pens and Caps, Ovi and Sid, to just remain so high strung and just endure for 2 decades now going into this year?
I think there's a healthy hatred. I don't think they really like each other. I don't ever see them hanging out when their careers are over. They're just so different people wise. That's not a knock on either. It's just that's who they are, but that's what makes the rivalry so good. And you're right. I mean, it precedes even Sid and Ovi. As you know, Josh, all 5 cups the Penguins have won, they've had to go through the Washington Capitals. So it goes all the way back to 91 and 92. back when this old geezer played. And so that's it's always been there. And Mario never had a real rival, but Yager goes to Washington, and that kind of it added more sparks and fire. But these two, it's must see TV, right? You just can't turn your away from it because you never know what can happen. And Ovi doesn't have as much as that physicality in this game as he's knocking on 40 years of age, but it's still there. It's still there, and you better have your head up because if number 8 gets you in the train tracks, it can mean trouble. I do find it bizarro that he doesn't really go after Sid so much. He more goes after Malkin, right? Which makes no sense.
Right.
But when the two of them are on the ice, and especially when the game is on the line, it's fireworks, man. You know something special is going to happen. And I just like that they're not buddy buddy. I like that they're different personalities. They come from different countries, and even those countries don't even like each other. But these two, I like when there's that. I like when there's pushing and shoving. I like when they're jawing back and forth. That just adds to the excitement of what could happen. Because when you stir the emotions of both those players, usually something special comes out of them.
Yeah, Sid will have his nice lean meal with his steak or whatnot, and pasta, and have his glass of red wine. Ovi's gonna have his Subway sandwich with a 6-pack of beer before the game. That's just kind of how they roll going into the rink. But it's worked for both of them. You mentioned the 5 cups and how each one's gone through for the Penguins Capitals matchup en route to Pittsburgh winning the cup. But I'm curious, when you think back, maybe this is one of those moments. Is there a moment or a memory from this rivalry with these two going head to head that really you say Sid Ovi head to head, Pens Caps, boom, this is what I'm thinking of?
It's not one thing, and it's all playoffs, right?
Yeah.
The double hat tricks was unbelievable, and people forget actually Ovi got the best of Sid in that one there. He got the victory. But then you add in, the flurry saves against him. One was the breakaway. The other one was off his knob, those are key moments. The breakaway was, I think, the first or second shift of the game. He makes a ridiculous save on Ovi. And it just, everybody else kind of piles on. And like when those two get together, I think the rest of the teams realize this is a special moment. We don't know how many more moments we're going to get of this. And so you see other players raise their game. We've talked about that too, Josh, that a lot of times it's not those two. It's other players raise their game and shine in those moments. But I don't think you're seeing as many individual moments from them. But you're right. I mean, it always feels like there's an undercurrent whenever they're on the ice, even though they're players that are closer to 40 than 35, there's still this competitive white hot fire that burns within them that I think we're still going to see something that's 10, 15, 20 years from now. We're still going to say, hey, remember when Sid was 38 and Ovi was 39, what they did in that game in Pittsburgh in November? I think that potential is still there.
This is, I don't know, in my lifetime, this is the greatest player versus player rivalry. But I know that there's the league's history and some of the guys that have gone head to head. I mean, I caught the tail end of Yzerman Sakic when I was growing up, and I always loved watching those Red Wings Avalanche games. But is there another one as far as two pillars of the game, two icon type of guys that comes to mind that you could even say comes close to what we've seen with Sid and Ovi? Because I think on top of the rivalry, like you have the cups on both sides, right? You have the individual trophies. Like the two guys lived up to the billing on top of just being rivals.
No, and I forgot to mention that, Washington, their only cup, they had to go through Pittsburgh, and when they won in overtime on that goal by Kuznetsov, that probably gave them the belief. They're like, wow, we finally did it. We finally beat Pittsburgh. Now we believe we can win the cup. And they did. They went on to win the Stanley Cup. So, it's funny you mentioned that because as we're talking, Josh, I was thinking there wasn't a whole lot with Mario and Wayne, right? That there was never this, there was always highly anticipated, but, Wayne was always on the West Coast. Mario was always in Pittsburgh, and so there was never those moments. I can't think of another one that has had this longevity, right? Same division, right? Fairly close to each other and big hockey markets. I don't think there's been another one, and I don't know if there'll be another one in the game, like Ovi and Sid. That, again, you've had international fireworks, and also again, like the kind of sub story, if you will, of with what's going on in Russia and everything,
Mhm.
with the war and politics and everything else, and the US and all that is, I think it's kind of an undercurrent to all of this between Sid and Ovi, and it's something that they embrace. And I think you'll agree, Josh, that we're damn lucky to have. I mean, if Sid's wearing the white hat and Ovi's wearing the black hat, that's what you need, right? You need a bad guy and you need a good guy to make the fireworks. And it's good for the NHL, right? We've needed this, and I'm glad that we've had it for 20 years now.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been so many memories. Looking forward to what'll be, I think, yeah, we see it on our screen right there, the 99th time that Crosby and Ovechkin, if you want to throw more numbers that are of significance
Wow.
in the NHL into
Yeah.
the mix, the 99th time that we'll get 87 verse 8.
Inside Penguins Hockey is back
Let's go eat sushi.
for an all-new season.
And now he's your best friend.
Yeah. Getting a line in the water is always a joy for me.
Inside Penguins Hockey. New episodes every month on SportsNet Pittsburgh. Presented by UPMC Health Plan.
When you think about Ovechkin over his career, his biggest sidekick was Backstrom. Sidney
Yep.
Crosby's had these other sidekicks. I mean, they've rotated, right? There was been Pascal Dupuis.
Yep.
There was briefly Marian Hossa, of course, Jake Gensel. More recently, it's become Bryan Rust and
Yep.
Rickard Rakell. And last year, they were the Penguins. They were their only line. Let's call it for what it is. Basically, when they didn't score, the Penguins didn't score. And as they scored, so did the Penguins. And that usually led to whether or not they would win their games last season. But Penguins dealt a blow. We mentioned those injuries. Rickard Rakell, 6 to 8 weeks, which now he's a couple weeks into after the hand surgery.
Yep.
He had a hot start, which we expected. 11 points in his first 9 games. Philip Hollander, as I mentioned earlier, moves up to the first line. But it was at practice, as we could dive into this a little bit more, that Ben
Yes.
Kindel on Wednesday gets the bump
Yep.
up. So there's this trickle-down effect, right? Like you mentioned, Kindel's a center normally. He's been a center
Yep.
on this team. He's going to move to the wing. I think the biggest thing that I'm curious about here, and I'm curious for your perspective, is we know he can play. We know he can
Yeah.
shoot. The question is, will he shoot, right? Because when you play with Crosby and Rust as an 18-year-old, I always feel like that's the first test. Are you going to be a little bit selfish, or are you going to be like, I need to give these guys the puck. I need to
Yeah.
feed them. I need to feed. Now, I'm sure he wants a few assists to his name too. He doesn't have any yet this year, but still, if he's got the shot, take it.
Yeah. And to add just a whole nother wrinkle to this, he's playing his off wing, right? He's a right hand shot. He's going to play the left side because Rusty is a right hand shot. He'll stay on the right side. And as an 18-year-old, not only you're not playing your natural position, not only are you playing with Sidney Crosby, but we're going to put you on the off wing too. But I would hesitate, and I might question it if it was somebody else, but not this kid, Josh. Not this kid. He's seamless, man. He has a maturity to him, and he has the ability to think quickly on his feet. He's got a quiet confidence too, and I know you know about this. I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit in your conversations with him early on, but he's got this belief in himself that most 18-year-olds don't, man. Don't in any walk of life, not just sport at the highest level in the world. If he's just going in business on his own or something like that, he's got this unbelievable belief in himself, and he knows how smart he is. He doesn't flaunt it. He doesn't flex it. But he has true belief in his game and what he can, and just as equally what he can't do, but also knows I'm a smart hockey player and I can adjust to anything you throw at me, even though, in a lot of people's eyes, I'm very inexperienced.
Yeah, he does have that quiet confidence. I mean, as you know, I spoke with him back in July, and I just kind of floated it to him. I said, hey, what's an ideal fall look like for Ben Kindel? Never, and I'll be honest, never in my wildest dreams when I asked him that question, thinking that he would be a part of our conversation here in the first full week in November, as a Pittsburgh Penguin, at least. I thought maybe we'd be checking in on him in Calgary with the Hitmen, but not here in Pittsburgh. And he said, well, if I get sent back to Calgary. And I was like, if.
Yeah.
That's an impressive thing to say, but to his credit, you're right. It wasn't an if in a cocky way. It was an if in, I know what I can do. I feel like I'm going to get an opportunity to show what I can do. and I'm going to make it very hard for them to say that I shouldn't be here. And I don't know, between Murashov coming up and him potentially being on the top line, just the future of the Penguins is on full display here with this 3-game and 4-day set coming up with the back-to-back this weekend. And I'm excited about it. I think Penguins fans should be too, because he's given us every reason to be excited. Murashov, we talked about earlier. There's other pieces to this puzzle, obviously, that we haven't quite seen up here yet. But man, it's going to be a big opportunity for him, and we shouldn't lose sight also, Bourque, of the other member of that line is Bryan Rust. It's been an interesting start. I'm curious for your thoughts on him, because obviously he was hurt in the beginning of the year, went a couple games without scoring when he first got in, then seemingly got a point every night. But it does seem like there's still been a little bit of catching up for him overall. I'm curious where you think on that, but the production's been there and you can't hurt that.
Yeah, I've learned not to question Bryan Rust, even if he's going through a bit of a dry spell or whatever. He knows how to get out of it, and he will take those two or three things that he knows gets him out of any kind of a dry spell, and he will just keep drilling down and drilling down and drilling down and repeat and rinse, repeat and rinse and repeat. And most of them, Josh, are simple things. That is taking the puck to the net. If I have to flip it up in my mouth and dive in, I'm going to do that. I'm going to find a way to score. And once I get one, I know I'll get two, and on he'll go. As well as do all the little things you have to do to play with a guy like Sidney Crosby. He's figured it out. Right. He's got a lot of the answers to the questions playing with Sid. And the other a little intangible thing is Rusty's become quite a leader. And so, Sid can talk to Ben Kindel in a certain way, and Ben Kindel might just be deer in the headlights. Sid might be saying one thing and it might not all soak in because it's Sid. But Rusty also knows how to read a room, and to just go sit down with Ben Kindel and just say, hey, this and hey, that. And hey, like when this pops up, try this. And, I remember when I first started playing with Sid, I tried to do this. It didn't work. So I learned quickly, this is what you do. And, the give and go and like all down low and like all those little things that he figured out on a very quick basis. And you're right. When you think of the best players to ever play with Sid, besides Hossa was kind of a one-off, right? But you mentioned Pascal Dupuis, undrafted player. Chris Kunitz, undrafted player. You even go back to, Andy Hilbert, when Sid first broke in the league with Colby Armstrong. I know Army was a first rounder, but, Army played more of a mucking, grinding kind of style that fit Sid. So, you got to be able to think on a very, very high level, but also have that mucker grinder mentality. And that's where Bryan Rust is, right? Rusty came in as a grinder, but then figured out Jake Gensel too. We didn't know what we had with Jake Gensel, right? Third round pick, smaller player, but he figured it out. He was able to find the questions to the test and then stick with them. And I think Ben Kindle's one of those guys too.
I wanted to ask you before we move on to our final topic about Dan Muse and just the line combinations that he's put together, because they have been creative and they've needed now with the bodies we mentioned out of the lineup to be creative. And I think probably one of the greatest strengths we heard about him was that he was a good communicator. He was a good developer and he had an eye for talent. But the thing that's impressed me the most is he seems to have a real feel of the flow of the game with how to send his lines out. And I know players on this team, and we don't need to say their names. It's pretty self-evident based on what I'm going to say here. They're not used to the distribution of ice time. They're not used to not getting their 20 plus minutes every night, but that's been the case. And, when you win, that kind of stuff doesn't really become an issue. And for the most part, the Penguins have been winning. They have points in 10 of their 14 games this year. I mean, that speaks for itself. But when you think about Muse and you just think about the fingerprints that he's put on this team 1 month in, a week or so into November here, it certainly has been busy. The practice time's been limited here for the last 2 or 3 weeks, really. But he's had an opportunity to put his fingerprints on this. And I'm just curious how you feel like from your perch and your view, a guy who had no NHL head coaching experience has come into this room with a lot of alphas and handled himself.
John Cooper ever play in the league?
No, he did not.
How about Scotty Bowman?
Nope.
Badger Bob Johnson? Badger Bob play?
No, he did not.
No, I didn't play. When you have the dedication to the coaching craft, the way that those people I just mentioned, and I'm going to throw Dan Muse in there only because of the dedication. Don't take this the wrong way. I'm not lumping him in with those other guys. When you have the kind of dedication, that's how quick you can get respect from NHL players. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about Sidney Crosby or Erik Karlsson or Bryan Rust or players that have been in the league a long time that have a lot of things figured out. You could easily have a guy, you think about when Mike Johnston came in here. Mike Johnson didn't have the dedication. And this is not a knock on him, but just facts. Mike Johnson didn't have the dedication that Dan Muse did. And he didn't last here very long. Okay. And so Dan Muse not only has that dedication to be creative, to be a great communicator, be incredibly organized, but he is prepared for this opportunity. And so he's not trying to keep up with the train. He's been on the train since 4:00 this morning, waiting for it to take off from the station. He's ready to go. And so that's why he has their attention. And what I've seen about him so far, Josh, is he's not reactive. He's very proactive. Whether it's timeouts in the middle of the game, his mind is already thinking a step ahead of, if this happens, what am I going to do? Well, what if this happens? What am I going to do? And so that's where you become a great bench boss. A great bench boss. And Scotty Bowman was the best ever any coach can know what your strengths are. But when he knows what your weaknesses are, as well as your strengths, that's when he can move the chess pieces around the board. And as a player, you kind of feel it coming, and you welcome it, and you enjoy it. Of like, okay, I wasn't playing really well up on Mario's line. Let's move Bourque down with Trotz, and let's see how that works. And you're like, yeah, that's what I needed. Actually, I needed to get off of Mario's line because I was taking him down. My game wasn't that great. Let me put with the well-rounded Brian Trotz. And so that's just a small example of. He's making those subtle little moves, but every move that he makes, it seems like he puts a lot of thought into it. He's not just, throwing the dart against the dartboard and seeing what nails. He puts a lot of thought into which players are playing with other players based off their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, he's been really impressive. Even, you and I observing him from a bit more inside the bubble with traveling with the team, and seeing him outside of the media availabilities. He's opened a lot of eyes, I think, to just why he earned the Penguins' admiration and eventually earned the job there very quickly here over the summer. But, you talk about Scotty Bowman, John Cooper, Badger Bob, yes, all undrafted, but all Stanley Cup champions. And Dan Muse, obviously, no doubt, one day hopes to do that here in Pittsburgh. But the Penguins on their way, hopefully back to a situation like that further down the line. They've been there, though, and it's hard to believe, Bourque, when you think about the most recent Cup 16-17, we're now in the 10-year anniversary of that 2016 Stanley Cup championship. Just to further go back to something you just said, at this time 10 years ago, Mike Johnston was still the head coach of the Penguins. He had not yet been fired, and Mike Sullivan had not yet taken over. So that just goes to show you how wild that season was. But when you look back, and we've been doing this on Get Me The Brandy all season long, but we look back at this 10th anniversary of the Penguins 15-16 Cup championship team. And 1 month into this season, you got two of the three Penguins goal scorers that are, top goal scorers are new to the team. Sidney Crosby, of course, usual suspect, leads the way with 9. Anthony Mantha's got 6. Justin Brazeau, now on the shelf, also has 6. The same thing happened, though, in 2015-16. So I'm curious, if we do a little trivia here, who were the two quote-unquote new Penguins among the top 3 goal scorers after October of 2015?
Who were the new Penguins in 15-16? 2 new faces that were top goal scorers. Well, let's see. 15,
Can we get that
16.
picture up again, Nick?
Yeah, let's see that again.
Because I think that picture, the body composition of one of the individuals might give it away.
Oh, really? No, Phil Kessel.
It looks like Phil.
Yeah, Phil the Thrill. And
who was
you got me on the other one?
Yeah, I'm even stumped here.
Matt Cullen.
That's a good one. Was Nick Bonino?
Oh, that's a good one too.
Whoa! All right,
there you go.
Look at that.
Wow.
Look at Nick.
There
Look at those
you go.
guys.
Wow, that's great. That's a great one. Wow, what an impact Phil Kessel had on this hockey team.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
uh,
Bourque, it's funny. I think back that was my first year too with the team when I
that's
first
right.
met you and
Yeah,
Mikey for the first time. And I remember doing pregame,
yeah,
postgame, that first game of that season, the Kessel debut. You guys were in Dallas. I don't know if you remember. And I'm
no,
like, oh, it's gonna be great. We're gonna have a great year. This team's loaded.
yeah,
And they get shut out 3-0 on opening night.
yeah.
And I start
Wow,
doing the postgame show, and I'm like, I don't really know what to talk about here because I didn't have the
yeah,
back, the years of past. I referenced them, but I didn't
sure,
live them, and it's easier when you've
sure.
lived them. And
Yeah,
then they didn't do anything in the game, so it's like, well, here's what
yeah,
could potentially happen down the line.
yeah, sure.
But yeah, I'm just curious when you think back of those guys. Obviously we've
Yeah,
gotten to know Bones really well, and Phil when he was here was a lightning rod, but no doubt a Hall of Fame producer for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and is a huge reason why they went back to back. When you think about those guys, what were your first impressions of them? Because like you are now, you were right there with the team
yeah.
right out of the gate around those guys every day.
They were just perfect fits. And the way that we saw some of the arguments that, Gino and Kessel would have on the bench, those are healthy, man. Those are, you kind of get all the cards out on the table and you air your differences and you become a family. And when you
Yeah,
do that, that's when you win together. And when you lose together and you're that tight, you don't want to disappoint your brother. That's what you become, a
right.
band of brothers. And that team came together very quickly because I think they were just such a, kind of a mishmash of personalities, but that mishmash, it fit. It really did. And, you talked about the HBK line, who thought that was going to work, right? With Hagelin and Kessel and Benino, right? There's just so three different players, but it did work so well. And, you had Patrick Hornquist on that team, who's an absolute maniac, it just seemed like all the pieces were there. And it just seemed like when the chips were on the line, they found a way to all come together. And I think it's because all those moments they went through, and even when Mike Sullivan, was early on, and the way he pushed them. So it was just such a healthy winning environment for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to be a part of, and then obviously going back to back was a dream for that team in accomplishing at the
Yeah,
time the only salary cap era team to go back to back. Since then, of
that's
course,
right.
we've had Tampa Bay and Florida just recently did it in the last two seasons. But
Right.
before we wrap up, I did want to say, you and I will be in the booth on Saturday for the game
That's
against the
right.
Devils
Yeah,
together, and then we'll be in the booth on the other side of the Atlantic, way out in
that's right.
Scandinavia, in Stockholm, Sweden. That's coming up
Yeah,
next week. It's hard to believe that the global series is here already, considering we've lived out of a suitcase for the better part of the season so far, Borky.
yeah.
I don't think we'll make that much of an adjustment. In fact, I'm already like halfway packed from just living out of that suitcase.
Wow. I'm
And that,
impressed.
that
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
just by luck because I'm just too lazy to unpack, but it's in
yeah,
there. But when you think about that opportunity for this team and what we can expect there in Stockholm,
yeah,
it's going to be unique. It's going to be fun. Refresh my
yeah.
memory. Did you go over there in 2008?
I did. I
Okay,
was there,
so
2008. Yeah.
so what are some of your memories from that? What are you looking forward to? Like, what can we expect, and what's this all about with this 2 game set with the Nashville Predators?
First of all, real quick, the city is unbelievable. The architecture, the food, the people, everything about it is incredible. Number one. Number two, they love hockey and they love Sidney Crosby. So there's a different buzz in the building for that. There's when the Penguins played the Ottawa Senators and they split those 2 games. This time it'll be the Nashville Predators, and Nashville's kind of had a wonky up and down start. So these are 2 big games. I will say one little quick thought that, it looks like that Murashov will be, traveling with the team, right? With these
Yeah,
injuries, but also going over there, you need to bring 3 goaltenders, right? So will it be Philip Larson or, help me with Gauthier is the other goaltender.
yeah. Taylor Gauthier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Taylor Gauthier, right? So the Penguins have to bring another goaltender over because you can't go over there with just 2 goaltenders in case something happens. So, there's a lot of moving parts. John Taglianetti will be challenged like he's never been challenged before. To bring all the equipment that you need over there. And it's great. A lot of players bring their wives, their girlfriends, their family. It's such a unique. You go over. You have a few days before the game, and when we went before, it was the opening 2 games of the season. And they kind of kicked it off, and the Penguins ended up winning that cup this year. So I'll throw that out there, that the Penguins won the cup that season the last time they went to Sweden. So we'll see what happens this year. But to me, it really brings the team together. You talk about going on the road and different things and dinners and all that stuff and being on the bus and the plane and playing cards and the whole thing. It brings the team together. But Sweden is another level because you know how unique it is. You don't get to go over there very often. Look at the Penguins haven't been over there since 2008. They haven't gone overseas and played in any of these global series games since 2008. So it's not just a given just because you have a good team or good players or you won cups or anything. So embrace it, enjoy it, because you don't know when, if it'll ever happen again for the Penguins.
Yeah, we can't wait for that. Those games obviously will be on SportsNet Pittsburgh. Bourque and I are going to call them. I'm trying to remember here. 2:00 next Friday, and then 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
The following or next Sunday. But I think that leads up to a Steelers home game at 1:00, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So that's going to be
double dipping. We'll get you well lubricated, I'm sure.
I was going to say that's going to be a pretty well lubricated city of Pittsburgh come about 4:00 Sunday afternoon in a week or so.
Yeah.
Looking forward to all that, Bourque, and looking forward to getting back in the booth with you on Saturday. Have a great call on Thursday for the Pens and the Caps, and we'll see if Pittsburgh can bounce back. As we mentioned, the schedule's not letting up. It's busy right now, 3 and 4 coming out of this little 2-day hiatus, but opportunity. And with the Caps and Devils as the first 2 games of this 3 and 4, you got some Metro opportunity right in front of you.
No, we are the Penguinis, Josh. Nothing is easy. Nothing is normal, but that's the way we go about our business. That's what makes us so interesting and exciting. And when we do finally win, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. It can be an absolute roller coaster of a ride, but it's fun. And that's the thing about this team right now. Win or lose, they will entertain the pants off of you, and you'll have a good time. I guarantee it. And yes, exciting times coming up. Washington, Jersey, LA, and then head overseas to take on those Nashville Predators.
Yeah, don't forget about that LA game. That's the last time Anze Kopitar will ever play in Pittsburgh. So we're looking forward to seeing him, another future Hall of Famer, for the final time in action. That's the old 2-9er Phil Bourque. I'm Josh Getzoff. This has been Get Me The Brandy. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we will catch you next time.